It's Supernal radio time, and with our new video series that we've started up. So for listeners and watchers, welcome to Supernal Magazine Australia. You'll be able to look at all of this stuff free if you go to www.supernalmagazineaustralia.com.au, and you can subscribe. Like I said, it's free online, and you can see all the videos we've done. You'll be able to get onto the podcast, and more importantly, you'll be able to look at all the back issues that we have available. From issue 1 right through to issue 35 that we're working on right now. My special guest today is all the way up from the Northern Rivers in New South Wales area, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Hollie Mariconte is a mum, is a photographer, is a farmer, is a whole lot of things. She's been helping out the magazine with information and photos of the disaster that is the floods that have occurred up there. So welcome, Hollie, to Supernal Magazine Radio.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to see you. We've chatted quite a few times over the last few months about the Northern Rivers disaster and what's been going on, and so we've never actually sort of seen each other face to face, so it's actually good to see the face to the name.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's start this off with a little bit about who is Hollie. You know, you're up. We can see the beautiful backdrop, and when this becomes a video, people will be able to see it. But you're up in the bush. So talk us through about your upbringing, where you've come from, what you do.
Okay. So I actually grew up in Papua New Guinea. Dad worked for a company called P&G Forest Products. So I spent majority of my childhood growing up there. So I'm used to the bush and the country and the wilderness. And then Mum and Dad had to send us off to boarding school. So I lived in Toowoomba for a couple of years, which was a really different experience because I just found Australia so different. It was a big adjustment. And then from there, I moved to the Gold Coast because Mum eventually came back. And yeah, spent my teenage years on the Gold Coast, where I met my husband. And then we travelled Australia. So he worked in the mines. So we've been WA, Darwin, all around the place. And then we decided that we couldn't go back to the Gold Coast. It was just a little bit too fast for us. Because my husband, he grew up in Byron Bay, so he was also used to that relaxed bush lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So then, yeah, we decided to buy the farm out here. So we're in between Casino and Kyogle. Mm-hmm. And a little bit far out, like we were looking closer to Byron, but, you know, the price range quite up there. So not in our price range anyway. So yeah, we bought out here, and we're on 100 acres, and we run cattle, and we do free range pigs, chickens, ducks. Yeah. And yeah, I'm a mum of 2, so we've got two children. They are both homeschooled at the moment, and which is actually going surprisingly well, considering I'm not a teacher. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and I'm a photographer. I can't leave that one out.
No, there's that at the bit, which is the whole point of what we're doing. So. Yeah. And I'll say one thing, though. I think why most parents don't think they're teachers per se, they are good teachers for the most part. It's just that it's not teaching the normal stuff they get in school, which is, you know,
that's right.
I will call questionable at times. I'll get shot at that, of course. But
I'll have to agree with you on that one. And, you know, just for the small amount of time that we've been homeschooling, the changes I've noticed in my 2 kids is amazing. And I don't know if it's because they are getting that one-on-one. And we only homeschool for an hour, 2 hours every day. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the time we're outside and life skills. You know, my daughter, she's 8 years old, and she's picked up my old camera, and she's coming to gigs with me. So the other day we went and did a shoot out at a farm for a company that do embryo transplants and artificial insemination. So she got to watch all of that and capture it. And to be honest, I think some of her photos are better than mine.
Wow, that's saying something. I think, it's a lot safer doing that these days with digital than it was in the old days when you were working with transparency film, which is,
Yeah.
you know, over print, because transparency obviously in the media side of it was always the preferred medium. Yeah.
And do that?
Sorry?
Did you do that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I went from, I think my first camera bought, which was probably close to 26 years ago, thinking about it. I bought it when I started working for a four-wheel drive magazine. And it was an old, I can't remember what brand it is. It was that old, but it was all fully manual. Everything was manual. And so manual focus, manual winding, manual settings. And it was a good way to learn because you got to understand your depth of field better. You got to understand how it's all going to work. And so I toddled off and did a photography course as, you know, part of what we were doing, and using print film at that point. Then with, you know, when I progressed up to a Nikon, I ended up sort of, again, using transparency film. And so that was a good learning curve. And these days with digital, oh my gosh, it's a whole nother world.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
The ability to check your photos there and then on the spot and make sure you've got something that you're happy with, you know, that's really different to the old days where you'd go on a photo shoot.
It would definitely make your life a lot easier.
Oh, look, it does. I mean, I learned a lot of lessons in the old days. Like I went out and did a shoot under fluorescent lighting, and it was about a 3.5-hour drive away, and got back, got everything developed, and everything was green. And the boss said to me, did you not like understand that when you photograph under fluorescent light that it goes green and your shots will end up like this? And I went, no. He said, well, you better make some time to go out there and reshoot it. So another 7 hours of driving there and back, plus another photo shoot. All the stuff outside was okay, so it was only really the inside stuff that I needed to redo.
But you never made that mistake again, did you?
I have not made that mistake again. And that's how you learn, you know.
Yes.
And digital really offers you the ability. I mean, I'll say, you know, one of the things from my perspective was the advent of digital has been great for a lot of people. It absolutely killed my photography business at the time, because what I was doing is specializing in photographing products for cars and caravans and boats and whatever. I'd rock up with a white sheet, do all the products at their place, get it all looking good, then disappear off, get all the contouring work done, get it all looking smick. And with the advent of digital and them over years watching how I did it, they started doing all their own products and everything else. So pretty much overnight, I watched my business go kaput. Yeah,
and
it was interesting.
I think these days as well, I mean, everyone's a photographer. You know, you've got it in a smartphone. It's quite a competitive area.
Yeah, oh look, it is. And I mean, I think if you've got a passion for it, that's what makes a difference between, say, an amateur and a professional. I've used my phone for photo shoots before to complement photos. You know, I've got great Nikon gear. It's all older stuff these days. You know, it still works perfectly good.
But you know, because I went to uni and I did a photography course through uni, and some of the lecturers I was talking about, they just said it's not even about the gear that you have, it's your eye, it's, you know, your perspective, and you know, they said you could have the oldest camera, because I mean, to be honest, I operate with DSLR, whereas everyone these days is going mirrorless. You know, I would like one down the track, but to be honest, for the price range, I'll just stick with the DSLR, I think.
I agree. You know, I love the fact that I can interchange what I want to change. You know, I quite often, if I'm on a photo shoot, you know, I'll probably have sometimes have two cameras going. So I've got a stills camera in one hand and a video camera set up on a tripod in another. And so, you know, I'll have a car and a caravan coming through the shot on video while I'm photographing it. And you know, it's a bit of madness at times that you've got to, it's not just that whole, it's getting the composition right, that you know, that you're happy with. And like you said, that comes from being able to look at something, go, yeah, I think this will look good this way or that way.
Well, that's it. And it's just about doing stuff differently, isn't it? You know, it's yeah, be brave and do something different. You know, don't be like everybody else. You know, I know a lot of people that that use presets in their editing. I hate presets purely because, you know, you got to do your own thing.
Yep. Yeah, look, and I agree. I learning full manually, I still will shoot in manual mode, and I'll still adjust how I'm getting my exposures and all the rest of it.
Exactly
Accordingly, because yeah, you can't, I think once it's in you, you can't not fiddle.
Yes.
And you know that these days tech is so amazing that, you know, it can sharpen photos, it can do all the recognition, all the rest of it. It really, it is allowing people to do some awesome photography.
Oh yeah.
You know.
And it is, there's some amazing photographers out there. Like, we've got a local photographer here, and his name's Mark Creedman. So jump on and have a look at him. But he's just amazing, you know, and he's just picked up a camera and just gone, I'm just going to take a photo of this. And all his images, like, I look at them just in awe. You know, some people have just got it.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people still shoot just for memories. And a lot of people, you know, you see on some of the social media platforms, some of the photos on there, and I just go, wow, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, they take the photo, they pick the right one, then they fiddle with the image color and the this and the that, and, you know, and then post it up, and it just looks $1 million.
And some people really understand, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat, the tech side of things. You know, they know their gear inside out.
Yes.
You know, and they can shoot in any situation, dark, light, you know, fast movement. They're just incredible.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's the good thing about it. I mean, you know, a good photographer is going to know their gear. It's like, you know, there's the one thing I've never managed to get particularly well is star trails. Whether it was on print or on digital, I've never managed to get it. I've got this fantastic deck that I can stand on here at home and, you know, get out on a clear night and practice. And I just, never managed that. But everything else I'm quite happy to do, you know, inside, outside, anywhere else, you know.
See, mine is low light. For some reason, not all low light conditions, but just some, I really struggle to get my head around it sometimes. And I don't know what it is. There's just something there. I've got to work on it, you know. Yeah. And I think majority of my shoots, they are during the day. Like, it's not often I would go to, you know, a night event or something like that. So, yeah, something I need to practice on, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I think everyone has their little thing they have to get over. And that's what I like about photography, is the fact that, you know, when you shoot something, you know, as you would know as a professional, you know, you always take maybe 20 photos and you're only going to use one, but you can't walk away from, like, you can't go back and get something again, and so that's what you do.
Well, that's it.
You know,
but I did shoot an event, and in camera it looked like it was really, really good. You know, the images looked beautiful, and when I got home, the noise in those images, I could not fix it. And so I ended up just doing something different and turned them into black and whites, and they looked really artistic in the end. You know, so that big major blunder turned into something quite amazing. And some of those images are my favorite images.
Well, you get to learn, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
I mean, that's the thing, you know. I've spent years traveling Australia. I've been very blessed in the amount of travel I have, and so, you know, you get in and you get out, and that's always been my work. You know, you don't often get hours to spend on a job. You'll get somewhere, you'll take 3 or 4 photos, 5 photos, and then you're in the car and you're moving again.
Yeah.
And, you know, so there is a need for that style of photography out there, where you can't set things up 100% or and whatever, but you get used to acting very quickly.
Yes.
To not miss things, because you're sort of there and da-da-da-da-da. Or,
that's
you know,
quick.
exactly. And wildlife, as you know, trying to, you know, I've seen some of your photography on your website, and you know, some of the bull riding and horse riding moments, you're only going to get one shot as a general rule.
That's it. And every ride is different, you know, even though, you know, some of those events, they have the same patterns, you know, the rider, the horse, you know, they're all going to do something different. So you're right. You've only got that one chance to grab them in their moment.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Quite picky with those events too, because you know they won't purchase a photo if the horse is, you know, standing in a certain position or their mouth's open, or you know, so it's really hard to get the rider and the horse both with their mouths closed, or you know, the rider with a semi-normal expression on.
Yeah, well, I mean that's one of the reasons I did one wedding basically in my life, and I stopped doing weddings. It was just not me. I take my hat off.
I'm not a wedding photographer, and I don't think I'll ever will be one.
No, I take my hat off to them, but I couldn't do it. And I worked with some models on another photo shoot, and I decided after that I'll stay away from the modeling world.
Yeah.
I couldn't get down that path, and so I found four-wheel drives, caravans, boats, other mechanical things much more agreeable to work on.
Yeah.
And photograph, because they didn't answer back.
Stay there.
Exactly. So yeah, but that's and that comes back to what we said earlier. Everyone's going to have their skill set for what they work in, and you know, if you're paying to set up shots, that's different. If you're paying to work with models and you've got full lighting and all the rest of it, I hardly use any lighting at all. That's just what I've got to work with.
The natural light. I'm the same. I don't use a lot of lighting. I did a little bit of food photography, but that was just in my own kitchen.
I thought you were going to say in my own lunchbox.
Here it is what I'm eating today. And I used a bit of lighting, and to be honest, I prefer natural light, definitely.
Yeah, I did that. I've done quite a few different photo shoots over the years. One of them was for a food company, and they wanted a big shot to go behind the desk at the very front, at the front counter of the building. You know, you walk in, it's very plain, and then they wanted this big shot of all their foods and grains and everything else. And so I said to them, well, look, we'll be able to do the shot. And they said, well, we've got a food stylist coming in. I went, perfect. Never worked with a food stylist before. There's a whole nother job description right there. And they said, well, you can use the boardroom table to give you the timber bottom. And so we ended up pushing this boardroom table over near a wall, and big, heavy, beautiful timber, to do this shot with all their grains and their breads and their sandwiches. The food stylist was there for ages getting it all look right. And really all I had to do was go click, 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 to make sure that it was good, and get it blown up to a very large size for their wall. But, you know, they're the challenges you can come across sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, lucky you had a food stylist. I was my own stylist, and to be honest, I think we'll take that one off the resume, because I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, well, I'd never worked with a food stylist before, and they are very good at, you know, what you see on food sometimes with the little droplets, and they, you know, she explained how, and the products they use to get all that and recreate all that, and it's just like, wow, it seriously is a whole nother job.
But even saying that, like some people, the techniques that they use to style the food, you wouldn't want to eat the food afterwards.
No.
I've seen a YouTube video of some of the things they do to make that food look so delicious. You just think, wow, like, don't eat it.
I think that's great. Yeah, it's the sort of thing. So thinking about some of your adventures into photography, I was up in the Territory, and I was walking through along a riverbank, and saw this grizzly old croc, you know, a freshie, not a salty, a freshie.
Wow.
But it looked like a salty. It was so old and chubby, and the mouth, you know, it was there. And one of the best shots I got was a bug flying into land on the nose of this old croc that was sitting on the bank. So there's the water, the croc, the bank, and this beautiful big bug thing that came in to land on its nose. I got told later it's not so much the crocs in the water or on the bank you got to watch, it's the ones that come off the land at you. And I went, oh, I hadn't even thought about that one. but I'm sure you've had a few interesting experiences with your photography.
Yeah, I think especially working with cattle, because they spook and they're such big animals, you know, and even with horses, you know. But no, I haven't had a run in like that, you know, with the croc. That's pretty frightening, especially in finding out afterwards.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
no, and I don't know. Yeah, no, I've had it pretty cruisy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're going to ring me up in about 2 weeks' time and say, remember that conversation? I just had a run-in with a cow. No, it is interesting because
Don't worry, I've had plenty of run-ins with cows, but not while I'm taking
I know,
photos.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, that's the thing. I mean, I love doing animal photography, but trying to capture animals sometimes.
Never staged. And I think that's why I've taken the direction more on the photojournalism and taking photos of animals and camp drafts and rodeos, because I love that, just that rawness, and just, okay, I don't know what's coming next. It just happens. It's organic.
Yes.
And I like that. So I'm with you in regards to anything staged, like a wedding or events and things like that. Not really my thing. And food as well. You know, I did that for a little bit and happy to do it, but you know, it's not what I love doing.
Yep. Yep. Well, I got to admit, I did and again, we're talking about totally unstaged, totally not knowing what's going on, but I've covered a lot of off-road full drive winching events, and I've always had an escape route, always have an escape route. And
Yeah.
you know, towards when digital really just started coming in a major way, a lot of people would have their digital cameras and they'd come out to an event and they'd sort of get in the way. And I said to one guy, I said, look, don't stand just there. I said, because if something happens here, you're going to cop it there. And
Yeah.
he's going, all right. So he moved over and I had my little spot, and a car lost control and I jumped behind the tree just as it hit the tree, you know.
Wow.
So it sort of wasn't at a high speed, but it certainly, if I hadn't been where I was, I wouldn't have had an escape route.
That's right.
I think
And
thinking...
be prepared like that, because I mean, things can change so very quickly. You know, in my regard, I've been lucky because at all these events, they already know how unpredictable these animals can be. So I'm behind a fence or a panel, or so I've been quite safe where I haven't needed an escape route or a tree to hide behind.
Yeah, you've got to do it. I think this is, I mean, sort of with the events that I've covered, a lot of the winching events, you never know what's going to go wrong. And I think this would apply to you in that sense, in a rodeo. Or a rodeo, depending on how you want to say it.
Yeah.
American or Australian version. But,
Yeah.
but it is really quite amazing that I've seen so many things where stuff's gone wrong, and you know, you do have to be prepared. I mean, you know, and watching what's happening all the time, because you know, if you've got cars jumping around you and bits and pieces, you've got to be on the ball. You've got to be aware.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't want to make a mistake because it could be very costly.
That's right. But even being respectful to the people that you're photographing as well, you know, I've at these events, if they come quite close to me, even though I think, oh, that'd be a great photo op, I don't want to ruin their run, you know, with spooking the horse or spooking the cow, or, you know, so you've got to hold back those urges too, where you think, oh, that would be the perfect money shot right there, because this sport is important, you know, and you have to be respectful at the same time.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, especially for beginner photographers to understand that, you know, we get where we are because we put years of work into it. We've got a clear way of thinking. We've got our plan out, and the respectfulness. And I've seen this a few times at events where something's gone wrong and people are standing around and taking photos left, right, and centre with their phones, and it's like, hey, excuse me, step back. We've got a situation we've got to deal with here.
That's right.
And you know, that's where I think sometimes not having respect for the people. I guess probably one of the reasons why I can't be a news journo that rocks up to a crash site and deals with crash stuff, because I just don't want to be that disrespectful.
Do you know, I think that's what the hardest part for me recently with the floods and taking photos of that, because this is people's lives out onto the gutter, and we're going in and taking photos of that. So I'm, instead of just going in and just going willy-nilly and taking photos of everything, I would ask, I'd knock on the door, do you mind if I take a photo? And majority of them said yes. There were some that said no. So I'm glad that I asked, because even in that situation, you have to be respectful. It's whereas I actually did pull up a photographer in Lismore. It's when it all first happened and we were first able to get into Lismore. And he was rearranging these mannequin heads out the front of a hair salon to get his perfect shot. And I actually know the owner of this salon, and she had lost her home as well as, the salon. And I pulled him up and just said, this is someone's business. I understand you're there to get your shot and for whatever publication that you're getting it for, but can you just take it as it is? Stop fiddling around. And because people were watching that, and they're thinking, what's this guy doing? He's rummaging around in there. He's I don't know. It got to me a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's important. And obviously from that respect side of things, when we're talking about a disaster like that, yes, we know the rules are anything that's out in the public, we can photograph without permission, except for children, as you know. And if you do shoot them, you've got to blur them out, which is, fair call.
Yeah.
But it's really hard because people don't get that. They don't understand that their front of their house is on display. You can take photos of it.
That's right. That's right. And some people, you've also got to think, there's so many people that have come from, abusive relationships or that don't want their things published. So you've got to remember that side of things as well.
Absolutely.
It's giving some location away, or.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've always done with a lot of the trip work that I've done is, when we have a meeting at the start of the trip, when everyone's together, we say, right, if anybody here has any problem with me taking photos, please come and talk to me now, because I don't want to put anyone in the poop. And again, it comes back to that respectful thing. And over the years, I've had a couple of people that have come and said, no, I don't want to do that, and I've just respected that, and it's easy. And you just go from there. But it comes back to, when you're dealing with people in a disaster situation that is devastating, you have to show some of that respect. And one of the reasons, we asked you for some help in this area was because we knew you were doing the right thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's, and that's what's important is, these people have lives. Their lives have just literally been washed away.
Yeah.
And, with what we've tried to do with Supernal, with that news coverage, is try and be very respectful, give it a face, try and make people aware of just how bad it actually was and still is.
And people are traumatized, even now. I mean, this was months ago, and, it's going to take a long time for these people to just get over that trauma. I mean, some of them won't come back from this disaster. They've lost so much, but just that trauma alone, like it's going to take some work, like in regards to mental health and.
Absolutely. So, my experience in that, like yours with the floods there, the Black Saturday fires and a lot of the wash up that occurred through King Lake and right across to Marysville and just everywhere. I lost friends in those fires.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's still there. It still hurts. And I've lost friends 10, 12 years later to cancer that's been triggered by the trauma. And it's really interesting, you know, there's some studies now starting to sort of highlight the fact that PTSD creates mental issues, clearly. Those mental issues then create physical issues, which is that spiritual aspect, and we know that occurs. And so the big thing for a lot of the people, like we did a lot of work, myself and my group that I was running at the time went up to Marysville. It was just one of them where we set up for a day and we just did energy work, and we talked to people, and they could get readings and they could do this and do that to help them come to terms with all of that sort of stuff. And that's the bit that I think gets lost in the, bad pun, in the wash. People get forgotten, you know, 2 months after it, 3 months after it, 4 months after it. You know, I still have a very good friend of mine, someone that is a photographer, loves the bush. He lost his house in the fires. He wasn't even there. And 10 years later, he is still suffering from PTSD because of that event.
Wow.
You know, and he's fairly switched on. So, you know, I think this is where either we're not getting it right as a community, as a government, or whatever. So, you know, so this is the important part, I think, about, you know, what you've mentioned to me in the past, and part of what this interview is about is making sure people don't forget, and that there are people that will need help years after this is finished.
Yeah. And yeah, don't forget about them, because I mean, what you would know yourself, you know, at the start of a disaster, you know, the media is everywhere, you know, you're hearing so much about it, and that'll go on for, like, you know, a couple of weeks, maybe a month if you're lucky. But then that coverage just fizzles out. And, you know, it's same with the volunteers. And I understand people have lives that they have to get back to. There's only so much time people can dedicate. But, you know, we need to keep this fresh and in the forefront of people's minds, because this will take such a long time. I mean, there's still people trying to come back from the bushfires. And I mean, we've got a town just further down. People are still living in tents, you know, and this is years, you know, like 3 years on, 2-3 years on.
Yeah. And, you know, it's crazy. And, you know, for all the government promises, it's all been talk and no action. And, you know, I was reading a piece in the paper recently where, you know, I think it was after the fires, ScoMo said, oh, we're going to set up a committee to look at, you know, for whatever, I can't remember the figure, but let's just say, you know, for 5 million for fire recovery and all that sort of stuff. And of course, it never got past the committee. So none of that money was ever put to the communities to help them.
Wow.
And so, you know, so when you sort of read information like that, and you're seeing it there, and you're realizing that if you talk to these people, the only help they're getting is from certain areas. It's not really coming from the government. You know, you've got all these fundraisers that have been happening, and as we know from the fires and the fundraising, you know, if you turn around and say, well, I'm going to raise it for these people, and, you know, and then I want to share it over here, well, you can't share it anymore because you've told those people they're going to get it. I mean, that was just a debacle and a half.
Yeah. But you've also got to be really, really careful with what organisations and what charities that you're donating to as well. I think a lot of people have lost faith in those bigger charities. The money wasn't used as it was said that it was going to be used. You know, some people didn't see a cent of it. So I think this time around with the flooding, people have been a little bit more careful, and instead of donating to someone else, they're asking people, I want to donate directly to your bank account, you know, to make sure that you've got it, you know, cut all the red tape and the rest of it, you know, which has helped to a degree. But then there's also been people that have tried to do that sort of thing and have had bank accounts frozen and all sorts of things. So
yeah, it's look, it's such a tricky way to go through, and all we can do is ask anyone listening that wants to donate and help in any way is to do some research first, make sure you're spot on with who and why and how you can help. Unfortunately, human nature being human nature, there's a lot of people ripping off the system and getting money for nothing, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
And
even
you can
that,
understand why there is red tape in place, because unfortunately that does happen. You know, people will claim something that they're not entitled to, and so I understand that. But yeah, I mean, some of it, like just hearing some of the stories that I have and talk to people and asking them, you know, have you had access to the grants? And majority of them are saying no, because we can't supply, you know, our last rate notice or ID, because we've lost it all. Like, you know, and it'll take, you know, a couple of weeks to get this back and that back. So, you know,
and then
the time just keeps getting pushed back, pushed back, pushed back.
yeah, that's the thing, and the time it takes to prove yourself, then you've got to get another, like a passport, or you've got to get a rates notice.
Yeah.
That process can take months.
That's right. But then the next hurdle to even get to that point, these areas where this flooding happened, they're so widespread. You know, they're not close. I mean, to get to the nearest town, you're driving, you know, 20, 30 kilometres.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these people lost their vehicles. You know, there was no services put into those towns. Like I know when Services Australia and I think it's Resilience Australia, they set up in Ballina, and people couldn't get there. You know, because they're like, there's no bus service. There's no way of us getting there. You know, there's no trams, there's no buses, there's no trains. It's, you rely on your vehicle. So that was another issue.
Yeah, and sort of even on top of that, in the bigger picture, it's getting vehicles back into the community.
Yeah.
And, you know, not trying to denigrate humanity too much, but we are shocking. But, you know, here's an opportunity for someone to bring in 50 cars and charge double what they're really worth, because people are desperate and need a car.
That's it. And then they'll pay it. They're desperate, you know? Yeah.
And it's not just that, it's the white goods, it's everything, you know. Once you lose something, and, you know, whether it's fire or flood or whatever, it just the struggle to replace it is, you know, insurance companies, are you covered? Yeah. How many people have found out they actually weren't covered for these floods? You know,
and even people that did know that they weren't covered because they couldn't afford the insurance. You know, I mean, I talked to a pensioner, he's 90 years old. It would have cost him $20,000 a year on flood insurance. He's like, well, where am I going to get that money from? I'm a pensioner.
Yeah, we live in a fire-prone area. We chose to live here. We choose to take out fire insurance, but a lot of companies won't do fire insurance down around here anymore. You know, they just simply don't cover it.
Where people are saying, you know, why do they live in these flood-affected areas? Like, you chose to live there. There's a lot of families there that are like fourth generation. Oh, hello, this is my daughter, Charlotte.
Hi, Charlotte. Do you know you're going to be famous now?
You're on camera.
You're on camera.
You know, that they've lived there for 4 generations, you know, in a home that their great-great-grandfathers built. And you know, that was their only option. They can't afford to go anywhere else.
That's it. You know, like, it's sort of this really quasi crazy sort of space that we live in. You know, we can't just live where we want to be, you know, according to government people. No, you can't live there because this might happen. It's like, well, hang on, I'm making the decision to take the risks. I'm taking ownership and responsibility for that. So go away. But, you know, that's, you know, as sad as it is to say, I've heard a few people now talking about the fact that the government are trying to get people out of these areas. You know, what that bigger picture is, I really don't know, don't understand, but it's pretty sad when you've got a government that's trying to force people out of the place they want to live.
Yes, yeah. And especially this way too. Yeah. You know, it's and saying that, you know, we've got more rain on the forecast. You know, this weekend we're supposed to have 300 mil of rain. This region can't handle 300 mil of rain right now. You know, insane. I'm walking on my ground and it's still boggy from the last bit. Like, there is nowhere for this water to go. It's so that's going to be interesting this weekend. And, you know, so the plans are to go back out into these areas just to see how they've coped after this weekend. And people are anxious. You know, any forecast that comes in, or a little bit of rain or a storm that's predicted, they're terrified, thinking, gosh, like, do we need to get out? It's I think a lot more people are preparing themselves, that didn't get a chance to during the first flood that went through. But living on edge, and like you said earlier, about the PTSD and the stress. I mean, stress is a killer.
Mm. Yeah, it is. And, and then there's on top of all of that stress that now relates, because I actually was talking to someone the other day, and one of their family friends was one of the people that passed in a roof cavity up there.
Oh.
And they only just realized, this is the sort of stuff that a lot of people don't get. And I know it's a morbid topic to have to delve into, but this is what life is, and it's just damn hard. And when you 2 months after the event, you're finding out that one of your best friends has passed in that event, and that's really sad, because that really impacts more than just the local community. I mean, the community is smashed anyway, but it does spread. It does spread, and that's why it takes a lot of special people, I think, to help rebuild and to support in any way they can, to whether it's financially, whether it's making people aware, like you have, through us and other means as well, and you're doing it free. You're doing it from your heart, not from a monetary space.
No.
You're not a freelance journo in the sense that a magazine editor brings up and says, right, get out to here, I'll give you $500, I want this shot, this shot. It's not like that. And I think for people like you, for people like Jeff Cantor, who I think put me onto you in the first place.
Okay, yeah.
So, and Gaz from Gazcam Live, they're...
And he's everywhere.
He's everywhere. My gosh, but without people like you guys trying to sort of back up what mainstream media flew in and flew out for, seriously, you guys are all the people that need to get support as well, because it will impact you emotionally at some point.
But the hard thing, because I did start doing some writing for AFIPN, so the Australian Free Independent Press Network. So I was just helping him out with some articles. And once again, that's all, volunteer work. Mm-hmm. And just reporting the news as it happens, the truth. There's no agenda. There's no nothing. It's just what you see, and trying your best as well not to have an opinion in it. So, doing some of those articles, those guys have been so heavily shadow banned, and all they're doing is reporting the news.
Unfortunately, I watched, I can't think of his first name at the moment, the guy that started it. Luke, yeah. They've actually had to shut it down.
Mm.
And so they're looking for a different platform.
And how sad that, all these guys are doing, and once again, all volunteers, just to bring people news, because so many people have lost faith in the mainstream media.
Yep. And
to be shadow banned, and not have a platform to share your news.
Yeah, this is careful how I say this, but this is where we are too with Supernal. We survive on advertising money and donations, and that's not to pay me a wage. That's to keep the magazine going. And people don't realize that how much work goes in behind the scenes. So what Luke was doing with his team, and they were pretty dedicated, I got to admit. I look at their stuff and go, oh my God, they're doing that every day. We're coming out sort of monthly. It's still a lot of work, and we rely on people helping us to educate and share what's going on in the world in our way, without the agenda of a mainstream media head saying you have to report this way, you have to do this, if you say anything against that agenda, you're out, that sort of thing.
What gets me is, personally, I couldn't work for a corporation like that.
Mm.
You know, like I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. You know, like knowing that I had reported something so wrong, you know, to alter someone's opinion, or, you know, I don't know how they sleep at night, to be honest.
Look, I don't know either. I mean, you know, one of the things that I was told very early on when I started working as an editorial assistant, learning about journalism and photography and all that sort of stuff, was my boss was at least honest enough to say, call it how you see it and we'll deal with it after that.
Yeah.
You know, and I refuse to do it any other way, even with what I'm doing now. I might change a few words around to reflect a slightly less damaging way of saying something.
Yep, I agree with that.
But it's, you know, I'm not going to turn around and say every person's going to commit suicide for this, and this, because that was simply not true. But people are committing suicide because of this and this and this. And so it's just a change in that process. But I was involved and have been involved, still are involved in the caravan full drive industry. And I started Supernal after having a fairly near-death experience, in the point that I nearly rolled a brand new car and caravan.
Oh, wow.
Single car accident would have been on the road by myself. My talent for the day, one had pulled out the day before, one pulled out that morning. So I was still doing the shoot. So I was very lucky. But when I rang up my editor and I said to him, I can't drive this car and van anywhere anymore because it's actually not safe. And this is, you know, beautiful day, no wind, no wet roads, no anything. You know, I was doing 92.5 kilometers an hour, you know, no one around me, but you know, until these cars saw me. And, you know, I rang up the owner of the caravan and he basically abused me for causing, you know, the potential rollover that we had. And then, you know, whereas the car manufacturer said, how soon can you get the car back? Can it be driven? Are there any noises? Is there any problems? We need our engineering team to go through this. You know, so what I'm getting at here is the level of then control about what actually happens. That manufacturer got off scot-free. It was never questioned. My editor said, well, you just don't write the story and that's it. And so it never got mentioned that car and that caravan combination could potentially be dangerous.
Wow.
And so, you know, and I was basically just put in a box. And, you know, when I brought it up, it was just shut down. No, can't talk about that. And obviously I don't work for that company anymore. But the thing that frustrated me is that here's something that's potentially very damaging and it just gets swept under the carpet because some higher up person doesn't want to go through the rigmarole of telling the truth.
That's right.
And so for us as Supernal, for Luke and his team, I tried to reach out to him the other day and couldn't get a hold of him. But I feel for them because all they're doing is reporting the truth.
Yeah. And they're doing it when, you know, after work, you know, they're still doing a 9-to-5 job, or they've still got other commitments. So, you know, this is just their free time.
Yeah.
You know, they're putting half an hour to an hour aside to do this. It's yeah, it's hard to see that, and it sort of angers you. You know, the fact that people can just sit by and just think that that's acceptable and that that's okay.
Yeah, and they don't know any different.
Yeah.
You know, and when I think, you know, I'm not bashing particular branded companies or anything else. That's not my thing. But when you sit and look at what mainstream media are doing and how they've sold their souls, you know, you just sit back and go, well, whoever's sitting above them that's setting that agenda, whoever's controlling them to set that agenda, it keeps getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And what people think is truly free, you know, speech, journalism, is you realize that it's actually pretty slanted against certain things. And that's what I've always objected to. If you can't report the truth and I say as you know it, but as you experience it, you know, I haven't experienced the floods you have, you've provided us with some shockingly amazing photography to just highlight just how bad it is. And that was the first time, then the second time, and the potential third time, you know. And this is what people have to, you know, I want people to understand that, you know, without magazines like us and Australian Free Independent Press and all these others that are actually trying to do the right thing, without them, all you're going to get is the agenda that somebody wants to set from up above.
Yes, that's right.
You know, so that's the thing. So in, you know, I know that sounds pretty gloomy for our listeners, but are people sort of starting to come back to themselves? Are they starting to be a bit more cheeky, chirpy, or is it still very much a down?
I think, you know, to drive through the town, and if I was to take some photos now, people would think, oh, they're back to normal, you know, because the debris has been moved from the streets. From the outside of these homes, they look like they're fine, you know, the what flood, you know. Not until you go inside those homes and go, oh, wow, these people are still camping on the floor with no walls, or, you know, no appliances, and you know, with the volunteers gone now and the little food hubs that they sort of had to help people out, you know, they've all sort of moved on now. You know, the government sort of stepped in a little bit more and said, okay, no, this is the way that we're doing things now. We don't need this. We don't need that. Some people are a bit angry about that because there are people that still need food, and, you know, they can't afford their groceries and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. People are still down. And like I said, mental health is a really, really big issue, the trauma of it all. I'm going to go back out there because I wanted sort of to conduct a bit of a survey just to find out, you know, the people that have had access to the Red Cross that apparently has donated. And maybe they have, I don't know. But to be honest, every person that I've spoken to, they haven't received any of those. So I wanted to conduct a survey and honestly just be able to tell people, okay, this many people receive this many people receive that, so we can see just how much help you know, has gone out amongst these communities.
Yeah, big endeavour, that one.
Yeah, huge.
And certainly, you know, we'd be interested in seeing sort of some of the results on that.
Yeah.
As a general feel, you know.
And, you know, I'd like to catch up with more people. I mean, you know, I sat in with an interview. I had to take a journalist around that from Al Jazeera publication. She came up and did some stories, and she interviewed a man. He's 90 years old, and he had worked at the Broadwater sugar mill pretty much his whole life, lived in a beautiful home in Woodburn, and the floods had ripped through. He's lost everything. So, you know, he'd just put in a new kitchen, new bathroom, you know, and now he's back to framing inside. And he was asked, you know, what happens from here for you? And, you know, he's hoping that, I don't know if he got one or not. I'd like to go back and ask him, but his family members had a caravan that they were going to loan him. And he just said, look, I'll just park it up in the yard and I'll just chip away at it. And I'm thinking, wow, like, you're 90 years old, the resilience in that man, you know, because he said, well, what else am I going to do? No one's going to buy it. He goes, I'm not going to get any money for it. So I've just got to deal with it.
Yep.
You know, and that's reality, you know, that's what most of these people are going through. Some are more fortunate than others. But yeah, this isn't a quick fix.
No, it's not. And that's one of the reasons we've touched on it, and we'll touch on it again after the interview, is about supplying some pages for you in the magazine to work and keep highlighting those sorts of things, because people need to see that. They need to see that this is how bad it's got. This is what's happened to this point. Now now's the hard work starts. Yeah.
You know, it's going to take some time. I mean, some businesses are reopening. For Lismore, however, some businesses have opened, but majority of them are choosing to try and find a different location, whether that's casino, because casino wasn't so badly affected. You know, to open up these businesses again, you know, it's a hard one. A lot of people are saying, oh, we need to move the centre of Lismore up onto the hill. And, you know, in reality, that makes sense. But yeah, I'd like to know how they're going to do it.
Well, this is the thing, and as we talked about earlier, you just wonder what the agenda is.
That's right. There's been a lot of talk. Whether it's going to be turned into something else, and
yeah,
So we'll.
It's definitely.
If they were going to have a chance, their chances now. So.
Well, that's it. So we'll deal with that one as it comes along. But
yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think from us to you, obviously, thank you very much for your help and support, because it's appreciated, and I think our viewers and our readers will appreciate it as well, because you, like all the other people we mentioned earlier, you guys are all doing this free.
Yeah.
You're paying for your own fuel, you're paying for your own accommodation or food and this and that.
And most of us aren't looking for handouts or, the sympathy of doing it for free or anything like that. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. And I can't agree with you more.
Yeah.
The more I've sort of, since I started Supernal, for example, I've seen the best and the worst in people. I'm seeing more people doing good things these days than bad things.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because my intent as a person is to keep doing the right thing, and so you attract those people. I'm not sure. But since I've started Supernal, I tell you what, I've meeting some amazing people, and they're all just doing their little bit,
Yeah. But that's all you can do. Just contribute that little bit. You might think that it's nothing, but it's huge. If we all just contributed that little bit, the world would be a better place.
Well, I'd like to think that, and that's certainly what we're working on, isn't it?
That's right.
Just it's interesting, because there are so many people out there saying very much the same thing. Don't feel bad that you can't contribute cash to something. You might be able to contribute some food, or you might be able to contribute some manual labor. And even if you can't do all of that, put them in your prayers. You're still, you're still contributing to the well-being of that.
Or share information. It's as simple as just clicking a like, or following someone, or just to keep updated. So even that word of mouth, having a conversation with someone in the supermarket about it. You might not be able to do anything, in the way of donations or anything like that, but that next person might.
Exactly. And I think that whole pay it forward type thing too can start with a smile.
Yeah, that's right.
And it sort of brings me back to a little story of just going down to the local supermarket once, probably last year, I suppose, in the middle of COVID or whatever, and a lady was coming out the electronic doors, and she had her arms full, and I sort of opened the door, saw her, and then I jumped back and said, with a smile, and said, "Oh, have a lovely day." And a guy came up and just said, "You'll get a lot of good karma for doing that. That was lovely." And then just walked
out. Wow.
So it's the little things, I think, that can make a difference, instead of being angry and horrible and all that sort of stuff. Why not just...
Your whole attitude can change someone's whole day.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's that easy. I've worked in customer service before the kids came along for many, many years. I worked for Centrelink, I worked for the ATO, all those services people don't like so much. But I've worked with customers all the time, and it's your attitude, like you said, a simple smile, or how are you, or just being, asking them the questions, are you okay? It really does change people's whole day.
I think it does, and I think that's the attitude that is always been very much Australian when things have gone wrong. It's always been that support your mates and do this and do that, and I think that's changed a bit over the years because of the way we've been governed to almost be egotistical, self-centered, all that sort of stuff, and yet. In times of trouble, you still see people stepping up and going, what, it's all good. We're with this.
Yeah.
And for whatever they can manage. And that's the beauty of what I see as being Australian for a start. But then we're, without all the propaganda and without all the other rubbish that goes with it, it's just that honest, hey, buddy, bloke, mate, you okay? And then taking it a step further and saying, how are you dealing with this?
Yeah.
because
Just
it's not just.
that's it. Just ask the question.
Yeah, exactly. So so no, that's a really, it's a good point, and I think that applies to everyone that listens to this. You know, ask the question.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to coin the phrase, are you okay? It just needs to be, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, that's it.
And so that's a good thing. So
a lot of us have lost touch, you know, well, not a lot of us, but, you know, in regards to technology and having everything at a click of a button, and you know, we don't interact with each other anymore, you know, like we don't go around for a cup of teas and you know, lunch or anything like that. It's like, oh yeah, I'll talk to you online.
Yeah, exactly. And you're losing that human connection.
That's it.
Where, you know, I've sort of make it a bit of a policy that if someone wants a hug, I just give them a hug.
Yeah.
Who, what, why, where. That's, you know, if that's what it is, that's how it is.
And how good does a hug feel?
Oh, awesome. You know, I mean, the good thing about technology is that we can do what we're doing right now. And you know, you're a couple of states away, and
has good points.
You know, it has its good points. That yeah, I think being in touch is not quite the same as it used to be. You know,
no.
Where you didn't have a phone in your pocket, you'd have to rock up at a mate's place and take a chance they were home. You know, that sort of stuff. Yeah,
that's it.
It's all very different. You know, back in the day when you had a phone that was connected to a cord and a wall.
Yeah.
You could only walk this far away.
Well, that's it. Oh gosh, the one that I had, we had 3 numbers we had to remember, you know, to ring our friends, and it was the dial-up, you know, the round phones.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I showed my kids a photo of that. They're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's a phone." I'm not that old, gosh.
Yeah, well, you know, well, I'm probably a little bit older than you, but you know, my remote control for my TV was a pull cue that used to push the buttons in from the different stations, and we only had 4.
At least you had that. I had to get up and physically change.
So you know, it's you know, it's all what it is. You know, we're in this time, and we make the best of it, and see the changes that roll through and work with it. But,
and you've got to be thankful for technology too, because you look at how the last couple of years have gone, and the censoring, and you know, we wouldn't know what we know if it wasn't for technology.
Exactly. So you know, it's like I said, it's the ride of our generation and generations to come.
Yeah.
So it's all pretty good. So all right, well look, on that note, if people wanted to catch up with Hollie and check out your photography, it's holliemariconte.com.
Yeah, that's right. Website.
Yep. And you've got a Facebook page as well?
Yeah, Facebook. If you just type in my name and then photography at the end, so Hollie Mariconte Photography, you'll find me on Facebook and on Instagram.
Yep. And I think in the grand old scheme of things, if people are looking for a good photographer up in that area, no hesitation from the editor to recommend you going up there. So
yeah, happy to help. Yeah.
It's great. It's great. All right. So just in wrapping up, folks, supernalmagazineaustralia.com.au, where you can get online, you can see our videos, see our podcasts, or listen to our podcasts. You get all access to all the magazines. Please check it out. And also remember, our partner in this is drn1.com radio over in WA, and they help us get all this out to the people. So check them out. And the One Life station, which is 24-hour relaxation music and some lifestyle shows like Supernal Radio. So go through all of that and enjoy. Hollie, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And good to meet you and see you on screen.
Finally. Hopefully we get to meet in person.
Oh, look, I can always hope so, because I never say no to anything really these days. So, yeah.
Well, if I'm ever down, you holler.
Sounds like a good thing, yeah, loud holler. So, all right, everybody, have a supernal week, and we'll catch you then. Ciao.